Welcome back. So, I had intended to wear a Team Canada jersey tonight no matter what happened. If Canada lost, I was still going to wear a Team Canada jersey. It's my country. And, I was very proud of their efforts. I also have said how many times that Canada doesn't play as well in a round robin as they do in a medal round or a must win game. And tonight, obviously, the end of a tournament, it's a must win game. So I expected a much better effort from Canada, and we got that. There's still some roster improvement, I think, that can be made between now and the Olympics, but Canada comes through. On the American side, that roster is pretty darn near perfect. I don't know that there's very much change that would need to take place there. Although, because Matthew Tkachuk didn't play nearly as much as he normally would, I think playing Kyle Connor would have made more sense than Matthew Tkachuk. And at any rate, there are going to be conversations in the coming days about who played where and who got how much ice time and all that fun stuff. So it's Binnington versus Hellebuck again. Gretzky was the honorary captain for the Canadian team. Guy Gaudreau was the honorary captain for the American team, and that was great. I thought Guy Gaudreau being the honorary captain for the American team was absolutely fantastic. So kudos to him for that. Things get pushy on an early hold by Binnington. This was not an overly fighty game, though. This is a championship game. You're not going to get those fights here. And I think this was a choice of the Canadian team not to engage in all of that in this game. This was an important game. You don't want to risk getting two for instigating, right? So fighting was off the board tonight. Matthews has a shot that's saved. Marchand loses the handle on a rush chance. There was that nervous energy from both teams early in this one. Werenski has a rush chance that saved. Parayko fires one wide on a 2-on-1 rush. And at 4:48, McKinnon puts one past the screen from a high slot. That was a good shot, too. Top corner, and Hellebuck didn't see it until it was in the net. Harley and Reinhart with the assists. So Canada with the 1-0 lead, which has not been a problem in this tournament for Canada. Getting the lead has been easy. Keeping the lead's been a problem, and tonight was another example of that. The Americans look to respond. Shots are 4-3 Canada at 6 minutes. Sorelli fires one wide from the slot. Gensel has a net drive chance that's held. Teams trade turnovers. The Americans press at 8.5 minutes. Faber has a shot that's tipped wide. Bennett fires one high on a turnover. Hellebuck denies Jarvis amidst a dog pile at the net. And I was beside myself watching it. Like, how are they not getting... Come on, get the puck. No, they just didn't get it in the net. There's a delay for an issue with the glass. It is Boston. These things happen with Boston from time to time. Hughes has a net feed that's picked off. Sanheim then has a net feed that's blocked. The teams trade rushes. McKinnon has a rush chance that's defended. Things get pushed in a hole by Binnington. The shots are 9 apiece with 3.5 minutes left. But you could feel the U.S. was dangerous. And then on a turnover that Matthews forces behind the net, he gets it to Brady Tkachuk, and at 16:52, Tkachuk puts it in. It's buried in close. And that was via turnover. So it's a 1-1 tie at that point. USA then looks for the lead. Canada having turnover issues in that period. And I thought the forechecking by the Americans was very good, and the physical play by the Americans was strong. In fact, numerous times where Canadians would go to make the hit and they just kind of bounce off the American players. I don't know if those count as hits. So 1-1 after the first. Second period, good early forechecking by Canada, but the U.S. keeps Canada the outside. They did a pretty good job of protecting the net front through most of the night. McDavid fires one wide on a rush. Puck catches J.T. Miller in the face, but he's okay. Probably toughened up his face when he punched it himself the other night. So, Matthew Tkachuk has a net feed that's held. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking around. I'm just kidding. There's a near miss by Point from the inner slot. McKinnon has a net feed that's picked off. The Americans press at 5 minutes. Marchand has a net drive that's blocked. Things get pushy and punchy on an offside, which is about as close to a fight as we got. And this one was a lot of push, and I'll push you. Don't you push me, and getting the gloves up a little bit. Emotions are rising. Very evenly game played at that point. Shots are 3-1 Canada at 6.5 minutes. But the Americans are doing a good job of preventing those in-close chances. So you've got Connor Hellebuck in net. You're protecting the front of the net. And then at 7:32, Sanderson buries a rebound from the slot. Matthews and Werenski with the assists. That gives the Americans a 2-1 lead. And I did see some criticism of Binnington. He did kick out a big rebound there. The Canadians not able to clear it. The Americans make him pay. So Canada looks to respond. Then there's an offensive zone penalty by Trocheck. That gives Canada the power play. The only power play in this entire game. Early clear, Canada cycles. The Americans block and clear. There's a shorthanded 2-on-1 that helps to end it. Just the one shot on net. Trocheck has a rush chance that's held. There's some pushing. The shots are 6-4 for the Americans with 8 minutes left. Crosby misses an open net on a rebound, and then on the replay it showed that it was Slavin that prevented that basically open net goal for Sidney Crosby. Crosby at that point didn't have a shot on net. I don't think he had a shot on net in the whole game, to be honest. No, he had one in the overtime. That's right. So, yeah, Slavin had another good defensive game. Raise your hand if you're surprised. You must be new to hockey and don't know who Slavin is. The Americans press with 7 minutes left. Strong puck pressure by the Americans. They're the more physical team. But at 14 minutes on a turnover, Sam Bennett roosts one on a turnover from Marner, and that ties the game at 2. Canada looks for another. McDavid has a rush chance that's blocked. Canada presses with 2 minutes left. McDavid has a slot shot that's saved. Brady Tkachuk has a rush chance that's held. It's 2-2 after the second period. We go to the third. The teams trade early rushes. Matthews has a rush chance that's blocked. Stone has a net feed that gets picked off. Gensel has a 2-on-1 chance that's held. The shots are 4-1 for the Americans at 5 minutes. Marner has a screenshot that's held. Canada was a post away from the lead. The Americans rush the other way. There's a near miss for Gensel and close. The Americans building some momentum. Jarvis has a rush chance that's blocked as the Americans continue to shut down Canadian forwards. Going into the third, there were, I think, 6 Canadian forwards that didn't have a shot. 2 American forwards that didn't have a shot. So the Americans doing a good job of cutting off those opportunities. Hughes has a rush chance that's fired high. The USA presses at 9.5 minutes. Harley has a point shot that's blocked. I want to give kudos to Thomas Harley. I thought he had a good game. This had to be the most pressure he's ever been under in his career. While Canada's defense had some shaky moments, I'm looking at Parayko and Sanheim with some of those, but I thought Harley played pretty well. Gensel generating a lot of chances, and I really felt like if the Americans had won this one in overtime, that it was going to be Jake Gensel that got the winner. Anybody who is still of the fallacious, wrong belief that Gensel can't be a star on his own just needs to watch his work in this tournament. Teams trade rushes. Canada presses, I should say, with 7 minutes left. It felt like overtime with 5 minutes left. We had basically both teams, everybody sitting back. No one wanted to make that mistake. What you're looking for in these games is, so who's going to bend, who's going to break, and teams just clearly not wanting to make that error that's going to end up in their own net. So both teams a little bit more conservative late. The Americans press with 4 minutes left. There was a nice Johnny Hockey chant. I would like to see Johnny Hockey chants continue in the regular season. Just because, Johnny Hockey, the loss of Johnny Hockey has been a lot for the hockey community this year. Boldy has a net feed that's picked off. McKinnon has a rush chance that's held. And I thought McKinnon was easily Canada's best forward. Although he doesn't get a star tonight. I don't understand. I mean, I guess I kind of understand why in the end, but McKinnon was the best forward Canada had in this tournament, full stop, as far as I'm concerned. Canada presses in the final minute, but it's still 2-2. We're going to overtime. And it felt like that's how this had to come to an end. That overtime, and overtime also means nobody can come out of this game and say, well, our team was clearly much, much better. No, this was an evenly played game for the most part. The Americans better on the physical side, and I thought they did a better job of blocking the net. Because shot attempts were almost the same, but the Americans were getting more on the net because they were blocking the chances that the Canadians were getting. So we go to overtime. Full 20-minute period scheduled. Full 5-on-5. Definitely would have been some general managers of teams that are playing early on Saturday that would have been kind of concerned. The early games, and I've already got them on the board, Minnesota at Detroit, the Oilers at Philly, and Washington at Pittsburgh. So there's the 6 teams that play early on Saturday. So any of the players from those teams, their general manager probably kind of concerned. We don't want them to be too tired. So McKinnon has a net feed that deflects out. The teams trade turnovers. Canada presses at 1.5 minutes. McDavid has a rush chance that's blocked. Matthews can't bury one in close as USA presses, but it was a great save on that as well by Binnington. Marchand has a rush chance that's defended. Shots are 3-2 for the Americans at 4 minutes. Brady Tkachuk's denied from the side of the net. Binnington holds. Binnington waited until tonight to have his best game. This was necessary. If Binnington had a rough night tonight, and I know people buried him for the 2 goals, I thought the first one was fine. I thought the second one was a bit of a problem, sure, but either way, he had a good night. The Americans press at 4.5 minutes. The shots are 6-3 for the Americans at 6.5 minutes, but at 8:18, McDavid. McDavid's taken a lot of criticism in this tournament. I've seen a lot of people talking about how he doesn't show up in big games, which is weird because they went all the way to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final in 2024, so He must have shown up in some of them because he won the Conn Smythe. Marner and McCarr with the assists. Really nice to see Mitch Marner with a couple of helpers in this one. And the other thing I want to point out is, so McDavid plays for a Canadian team on Team Canada. The 2 Canadian goals in the first 60 minutes were scored by players who play on American teams, and both American goals in the first 60 minutes were scored by members of the Ottawa Senators, which shows how truly intertwined the players are, and it's a great part of the story. So Canada wins in overtime 3-2. The shots on net, 11-10 Canada in the first, 9-8 US in the second, 8-4 US in the third, 6-4 for the Americans in the overtime, but Canada with the shot that matters. Final shots, 33-27 for the US. Power plays, Canada 0-1. The Americans wanted a too many men on the ice call with the Canadians. It did not happen. I don't think the referees wanted to have any influence over the result tonight, so they just called one penalty, and that was it. The hits 28-25 for the Americans. Binnington saves 31 out of 33. Hellebuck saves 24 out of 27. Your 3 stars in this one: McDavid, Binnington, and Brady Tkachuk. Now, for the one criticism I do have is, why was Team Canada, and you'll notice I'm wearing a red Canadian hat, why were they blue hats for the champions? Were they expecting a U.S. victory in this? Because the U.S. hats, blue hats, makes a lot more sense than Canadian hats. Were they ripping patches off? If you rip the Canadian logo off, is there an American one underneath? I was like, blue hats? Why are they blue hats? In fact, Yvonne said the same thing. She was like, those don't match at all. So yeah, McDavid, Binnington, Tkachuk, your 3 stars. I would have given a star to McKinnon. I would have. I probably would have maybe even bumped McDavid, honestly, for McKinnon, because without McKinnon's play in those first 60 minutes, we don't get to overtime, and McDavid doesn't get his winner. I understand why McDavid gets the first star. I get it. But, yeah, so there you go. The tournament is done. We will see these nations go at it once again at the Olympics. Just keep in mind that when we get to the Olympics, there are other countries involved, and there's not a guarantee that we see the Canadians and Americans in a gold medal game, although that's kind of where we all kind of hope that it ends up. So there we go. It's done. We go back to NHL regular season hockey on Saturday. I will be very interested to see how the NHL tries to take some of the casual fans who've been watching this tournament and tries to turn them into fans of the National Hockey League coming out of it. It is a challenge. It is not an easy thing to do. Regular season hockey doesn't have that same intensity, but playoff hockey does. And we're less than 2 months from playoff hockey, so you just have to find a way to draw them in. There's going to be some trades coming out now after this tournament as well. And, I mean, there are ways to generate interest. I will be interested to see how the National Hockey League does it. Because we've talked before about how they don't really promote their stars enough. And their promotions of things just usually don't go that far. And they've fallen behind other sports in that regard. So they have a really prime opportunity here to turn that narrative around a little bit coming out of this tournament. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event you may not have done so already. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.